Being healthy is undoubtedly a vital necessity at all times, in any era and at any age. And it's not even about the obvious and well-known truth that being sick is, to put it mildly, very uncomfortable and unpleasant. And the fact is that the treatment process often turns out to be an extremely burdensome task and, to be honest, quite unpleasant. This applies not only to painful and sometimes humiliating procedures, but also to often quite significant financial costs, which hit the wallet and can sometimes turn into a real tragedy for the family budget. Fortunately, in our 21st century, medicine has made a tremendous leap forward, offering humanity much more humane, gentle, and most importantly, effective treatment methods than those available to our ancestors in past centuries. It's enough to just take a moment, literally a fraction of a second, to remember the existence of such civilizational blessings as anesthesia, painkillers, antiviral drugs, and of course, various means that help stabilize and normalize the functioning of such a delicate system, like our intestines, to truly appreciate the fact that we are indeed fortunate to be born in a modern, developed, and, I won't shy away from saying, a humane world. For some reason, in public consciousness and historical memory, the Dark Middle Ages are often considered the antithesis of modern conveniences and everything progressive. It is believed that during this period of history, shrouded in myths and legends, everything was particularly dark and terrible. People died young, not reaching old age, and the means of treatment were not just ineffective or useless, but truly barbaric, cruel, and at times simply inhumane. However, if you take a closer look, setting aside prejudices and stereotypes, it becomes clear that the situation was not much better in modern times, let alone in the ancient world, that we are used to thinking about with a sigh and undisguised admiration. Imagine that you, for example, by the will of fate or some incredible coincidence, are living in ancient Greece, this cradle of Western civilization, and of course, as often happens in life, at the most inconvenient moment, illness has caught up with you. Which one specifically? Yes, just an illness, as it was common in those distant times. Accurate diagnoses. At that time, unfortunately, they hadn't invented it yet, so all that was left was to guess the causes of the malaise. But all the residents of ancient Greece knew very well that they could go for treatment to the so-called Asclepius. What kind of mysterious place is this? Is it a prototype of modern hospitals where highly qualified doctors work? Not at all. Asclepius was, in essence, a sanctuary or temples dedicated to the legendary healer Asclepius, whom the Greeks revered as the god of medicine. There were no doctors in the modern sense of the word. The treatment procedure was quite simple and straightforward. The sick person just needed to lie down to sleep within the walls of the temple. If you're lucky, and the gods are gracious, then in his sleep, Asclepius himself will appear to him, and, as if by the wave of a magic wand, he will heal him of all ailments. But if, unfortunately, you're not lucky, then there's nothing you can do. Such is fate. All that was left was to hope for the mercy of the gods. And around these Asclepius, like bees to honey, or if you prefer, flies to something not very appetizing, numerous healers, shamans, and other self-taught healers gathered, ready to treat you for a certain and sometimes quite substantial reward. They of course never gave any guarantees. They didn't promise 100% cure, but they could treat you, as they say, to the fullest extent. Their highly questionable methods were simply an explosive, and sometimes life-threatening mixture of magic, a variety of conspiracies, herbal therapy, aromatherapy, and outright unmasked charlatanism. In fact, in those distant and naive times, people often relied not so much on the advice of these dubious doctors, how much they relied on their own dreams, naively believing that it was in their dreams that an effective and truly powerful remedy for their painful ailment could be revealed to them. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure what exactly Aristides was suffering from, which modern historian Petsalis Diamidis discusses with such interest and enthusiasm in his book, but it is known for certain and reliably that this resident of the ancient world dreamed of the need to do nothing less than a honey enema. Yes, you heard that right, it was indeed from honey. By the way, he slept that night in the Asclepius, and this means that he is so strange, and let's be honest, a rather ridiculous piece of advice came directly from Asclepius himself. One can only hope and believe that such, to put it mildly, an unusual and strange procedure really helped the prisoner recover and return to a full life. But we strongly advise against repeating anything like that, at least without prior consultation with a doctor. Another very peculiar and, frankly speaking, rather frightening method of treatment was to give the sick person over to be licked by animals. It was especially valued if a sick person, weakened by illness, was licked by dogs, as well as snakes, which, as we know, are not particularly known for their gentleness and affection. After all, it's no coincidence that the snake entwined around a staff is the symbol of Asclepius himself. And now, let's take a moment to transport ourselves to ancient Egypt, and imagine that you live in this majestic, mysterious country, and you are suffering from an unbearable and exhausting headache. So what should you do in that case? Here's some tried and tested advice that's been around for centuries. Just take a clay crocodile and tie it to your long-suffering head. Yes, that's it. Now you can just sit back, relax, and wait for the miracle to happen. There is also a more troublesome and labor-intensive recipe. You need to take the skull of a catfish, which, if anyone doesn't know, is the most common catfish, and crumble it, fry it in oil, and spread it with this simply hellish and, to be honest, with that stinky mixture on your long-suffering head. The Egyptians in general, must be acknowledged, they approached treatment in quite an unconventional way. But from their perspective, it was very reasonable and logical. Were they trying to figure out what kind of malicious and harmful demon was lodged in your body and causes this terrible and agonizing disease? And then, based on the type of demon and its characteristics, special and quite elaborate incantations were used, which, as they hoped, would be able to drive out the demon and restore the person's health. So even back in those distant times, there was a clear and, importantly, justifiable cause and effect relationship from their perspective. Understanding that not all diseases are the same, and that for each disease, specific remedies are needed that can tackle this particular ailment. Archaeologists, while conducting their meticulous excavations, often find surgical instruments from the ancient world, and also some prosthetics, which were supposed to replace limbs lost in battles or as a result of accidents. But unfortunately, we have no reliable statistics that could give us even a rough idea of how many people might have survived these extremely painful procedures. Performed on living people, fully conscious and with minimal use of painkillers. In ancient Rome, unlike in ancient Greece and Egypt, the situation with medicine began to change for the better, and quite significantly. There, a scientific and truly rational understanding of the processes occurring in the human body began to take shape. A condition appeared in the body. The narrow specialization of doctors, as well as government regulation of certain elements of treating the population. In the cities, they had already realized a simple yet important truth. What about burying people? The dead from infectious diseases should be buried far away from living areas to prevent the spread of diseases and to protect healthy people. That's when the concept of a healthy lifestyle emerged. The importance and crucial role of clean and fresh air for the health of the entire body was recognized. That's why in Rome, wealthy, affluent homes and villas were built on the hills, where the air was cleaner, and the poor, unfortunately, had to squeeze into the lowlands where the air was stuffy, dirty, and unsuitable for normal life. It was also considered good form and a sign of wealth to have a slave who could provide first aid, and even organized treatment at the level of a modern therapist or family doctor. But of course, all these benefits were only available in large and wealthy cities. Far from civilization, in small villages and hamlets, people had to rely solely on their attentiveness to their own health and on a strong, resilient immune system. Naturally, the development of medicine as a science happened through trial and error, and unfortunately, numerous mistakes. And if too many people are dying from your treatment, then obviously, you need to radically change something in your methods and urgently make corrections. That's right. The history of medicine, as we all understand, is far from over. It's quite possible that someday in the distant future, they will look back on our era and our modern treatment methods, which we consider so advanced, will be remembered with shuddering and horror.